Absolutely. Here's Section 1. Arrival of the Deathworlder, written to meet the 700-word minimum. Hashtag Section 1. Arrival of the Deathworlder. The Galactic Academy of Unity was unlike any other institution in the known universe. Perched in neutral orbit above the luminous planet of Virex 2, its polished halls and bioadaptive architecture catered to species from over 36 star systems. Floatlift corridors seamlessly carried beings from light-fragile cephalopods to multi-ton crustaceans. Each morning, its halls buzzed with chatter in dozens of tongues, trills, and pheromone pulses. Drawl, a third-tier student from the temperate marshes of Venhalak, padded quietly down the corridor toward Gymnasium Dome 3. His clawed feet made a soft clack-clack on the padded floor. His scales were flushed a nervous amber, his dorsal frill twitching. He'd heard a rumor last night, one he was trying hard to disbelieve. "Did you hear?" Hiskra had said at dinner, his 6 eyes darting. "They're assigning one of them to physical training." Drawl had nearly dropped his nutrient blend. "You mean?" "A Deathworlder," Hiskra hissed. The word alone carried weight. Humans. Born on a planet Earth, classified Class 5 hazard by the Interstellar Council. Oxygen-rich, gravity-intense, home to apex predators and atmospheric volatility. No other known sapient species had evolved under such conditions. Humans were labeled resilient, but that was the polite term. The others just called them dangerous. "Maybe it's just a rumor," Drawl muttered as he stepped through the wide entrance to Dome 3. The massive chamber pulsed with artificial gravity fields and reactive training zones. Instructors floated nearby in their grav belts. Fellow students milled around in loose pairs, stretching limbs or flexing carapaces. A variety of species were present, a few silken-plumed Avixi, the water-bound Keltruan in their wheeled tanks, and the hulking, quadrupedal Groshkan flexing their armored forelimbs. Then the instructor floated in, Jakael, a veteran from the Praxian Wars, all 6 limbs twitching with formality. "Students, attention!" The command silenced the room. "We welcome a new arrival today," Jakael continued. "A transfer student from Earth's branch of the Academy. Please extend the standard courtesy and respect." Every eye, orb, compound lens, and electrosensory focus turned toward the entry gate. A human stepped through. She was tall, taller than most of the gathered aliens, bipedal, with a shock of dark brown hair tied behind her head and sun-kissed skin. Dressed in standard-issue gymwear, she seemed relaxed. A gentle smile touched her face as she scanned the room. "Hi," she said, waving with one arm. Absolute silence. Drawl's frill stiffened. He could feel the wave of tension ripple through the group. The Groshkan backed a half-step away. One of the Avixi fluttered into the air, almost instinctively gaining height. Even the Keltruan, safe inside their fluid tanks, retreated slightly from the tank glass. "She's smiling," whispered a student nearby. "Is that a threat display?" "No," someone else replied. "I think it's worse. It's confidence." Jakael cleared his throat. "This is Ava Carter. She has full clearance and will be joining this gym rotation. Partner drills begin shortly." No one moved. After an uncomfortable pause, Ava stepped forward with a shrug. "I guess I'll find someone." Drawl's stomach dropped as he felt Jakael's eyes turn toward him. "Student Drawl, you are unpartnered." "Why, yes, instructor," Drawl stammered. I accept." Ava walked toward him, boots soft on the floor, and extended a hand.
"Hey."
"Nice to meet you." Drawl hesitated. Her hand had visible scar lines, faint but real. He'd read they healed incredibly fast, another Deathworld trait. Slowly, he extended one clawed digit and touched her palm. It was warm, strong. "I am Drawl of Venhalak," he said. Her grin widened.
"Cool.
"Let's crush this workout, huh?" He blinked. Was that a declaration of violence? Or enthusiasm? Impossible to tell. Jakael clapped his upper limbs. "Begin warm-up." 2-minute joint mobility sequence, followed by 3 gravity shuttle sprints. "Go." They moved to a flat training zone. Ava began jogging in place, her arms swinging easily. Drawl copied her movements stiffly, glancing sideways. Her joints didn't click, her breath didn't hitch. She moved like she was in low gravity. He was already winded 30 seconds in. Don't overdo it, Ava said, her voice light. You're not used to this pace, huh? I can manage, Drawl gasped, chest rising fast. She chuckled, not mockingly, more like encouragement. You're doing fine. As the warm-up continued, Drawl's initial terror didn't vanish, but a crack of doubt formed in it. Ava hadn't broken anything. She hadn't screamed or roared or clawed anyone. She was fast, yes, and powerful. But she was also smiling, patient, friendly, confusing. Maybe the rumors were wrong. Or maybe they just didn't tell the whole story. Would you like me to continue with Section 2 now? Certainly. Here's Section 2, Misunderstandings and Demonstrations, written with at least 700 words. Hashtag Section 2, Misunderstandings and Demonstrations. By the time the warm-up had ended, most of the students were no longer watching their own partners. They were watching her. Ava Carter, the Deathworlder. Drawl was winded and slightly dizzy. The training zone's gravity had shifted subtly during their shuttle sprints, cycling between 0.8 and 1.5 gal standard, and while that was tolerable for most species, it left his joints aching. Ava, on the other hand, looked like she had just gone for a stroll through a park. A high-gravity park. You okay? She asked, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. Her fingers were calloused. Her touch was careful, deliberate. But her strength was evident even in that minor contact. It was like being nudged by a support strut. I will adapt, Drawl replied, attempting to stand a little taller. His dorsal frill drooped. Hey, no rush. This stuff takes time, Ava said brightly, seemingly oblivious to the wall of eyes and sensory organs watching her from every angle. The next drill was more intense, gravity resistance intervals. Each student had to run through a suspended track zone where the gravity would spike in pulses, testing strength, balance, and adaptation. Most species topped out at level 2. A few of the predator-class beings, like the scaled Rektha or the rock-bodied Plantarians, trained at level 3. When Ava's name appeared on the display board, the setting flashed. Level 4. A hush spread across the gym. That must be a mistake, a student whispered. She'll be crushed, someone added. Jerkael didn't correct the setting. Proceed. Ava tilted her head. 4, huh? Well, guess we'll find out. Without hesitation, she stepped onto the track. The platform beneath her feet shimmered as the gravitational fields engaged. Her body tensed, then stabilized. She took a slow, measured breath and ran. Drawl's jaw dropped. Her stride was fluid, powerful. Each step slammed down with a thud, her muscles visibly resisting the artificial pull of 4 times galactic standard. The machine whined under the strain. Halfway through the course, she flipped into a roll, rebounded off a wall, and sprinted the final stretch, laughing as she did it. The machine signaled completion. Time, 47.2 seconds. Heart rate, normal. Oxygen consumption, minimal. It was impossible. That setting was designed for grav drone testing. Ava stepped off the platform and waved at the stunned crowd. I think I messed up the timer, she said with a shrug. No, Jerkael replied. The time was accurate. Silence. One of the Groshkin students muttered. That should have shattered her bones. She didn't even look strained, another hissed. What are they made of? From that moment, everything changed, but not in the way Ava might have hoped. Her performance, instead of inspiring admiration, sent a ripple of fear through the class. At lunch, no one sat near her. She took a corner table in the open arboretum, overlooking the synthetic sunlight filtering through the hollow canopy. Her food, a Terran meal pack, unfolded in layers. Dark bread, some kind of grilled meat, and a side of brightly colored vegetables. She doused it with a fiery red sauce that smelled like burning metal to some of the more sensitive students. A nearby Keltruan wobbled in their tank. She consumes capsaicins willingly. That's a neurotoxin. Drawl sat down at his usual table, not too far away. He watched her as she carefully unwrapped her protein bar and took small, neat bites. She wasn't snarling. She wasn't growling. She looked peaceful, like someone enjoying a moment of quiet. Yet the murmurs around the mess hall grew louder. I heard her species survived global ice ages and radiation events. I read they invented war before spaceflight. They used their own muscles for locomotion, not even assistance exographs. Drawl's frill twitched. It was strange. He had been terrified too, at first. But the more he observed her, the less she seemed like a galactic menace and more like just another student. A bit stronger, sure. A bit faster. But not malevolent. Later that cycle, during free recreation hour, some students gathered in Gym Dome 2 for a casual game of zero-gravity volley disc. The goal: hit the disc through a floating ring using hand slaps, assisted only by magnetic ankle grips. Ava watched from the sidelines. "Mind if I join?" she asked cheerfully. The players exchanged glances. The instructor hesitated, then nodded. Ava stepped into the field. Her movements in zero-G were initially awkward. She bumped off a wall, laughing as she reoriented. Okay, trickier than it looks. Then someone served the disc. Ava leapt after it, misjudged the force, and sent it rocketing across the dome. It hit the upper canopy with a clang that reverberated like thunder. The energy ring flickered. 2 students screamed and ducked for cover. "Sorry," she called. "Didn't mean to go that hard." The game ended moments later. No one wanted to continue. Ava floated back to the edge. Quiet now. Her laughter had died. She touched the wall to steady herself and sighed. Draw watched the whole thing. The other saw a predator who couldn't control her strength. But he saw something else, something that unsettled him more than the stories ever did. She looked lonely. "Would you like me to continue with Section 3 next?" "Of course." Here's Section 3. Crisis and Revelation, with at least 700 words. Hashtag Section 3. Crisis and Revelation. The next cycle's training began with hesitation. Everyone showed up, but they gave Ava Carter a wide berth. Even JKL's normally strict voice was more clipped, more formal, as if trying to defuse a situation already bubbling under the surface. Drawl had spent the night replaying yesterday's events in his head. Ava's display of strength, the volley disc incident, the lunch isolation, and the way she'd sighed afterward, shoulders slumped like she carried a weight no one else could see. He'd never seen a predator look sad before. Today's training was the dynamic obstacle course, a floating maze of modular platforms, gravity shifts, and environmental hazards designed to test coordination and adaptability. Safety protocols were in place. At least, they were supposed to be. Split into groups of 3, JKL ordered. Each group will time trial the course. Any deviations from path result in point loss. Physical contact is discouraged. Ava was assigned to a group with a large quadruped Groshkin named Vactor and a flight capable of Ixie named Mlay. They both stiffened when the groupings were read, but neither dared challenge the instructor. Drawl watched from the waiting platform as the first teams entered the course. Hover pads spun lazily at odd intervals. Gravity wells toggled, pushing and pulling bodies in unnatural ways. He swallowed hard. Even without malfunctions, it was grueling. His group was scheduled third, right after Ava's. When her turn came, she gave Vactor a thumbs up. "Let's do this." The Groshkin didn't reply. Ava stepped confidently into the course. Her first leap carried her farther than the other 2, who struggled to match her trajectory. Mlay fluttered midair, clearly nervous to approach the same platform Ava had just landed on, where her boots had slightly bent the reinforced alloy paneling. Then, the anomaly hit. Without warning, one of the central grav nodes malfunctioned. A pulse surged sideways instead of down, and the affected corridor collapsed in on itself. One of the support beams cracked, then snapped, crashing onto the modular path below. Alarms screamed to life. Red warning lights flared across the dome. Emergency field protocols triggered, but slowly. Too slowly. And Drawl saw it clearly. He had moved forward in anticipation of his own trial, too close to the edge. The force from the failing grav node sucked him forward, yanking his smaller frame into the course. He screamed as his claws scrabbled uselessly at the edge, and then he fell. Straight into the damage zone. The corridor was compressing. The gravity field had gone rogue, spiking rapidly between 0.2 and 4.8 standard. The structural supports groaned, threatening full collapse. Student in hazard zone. HFY barked. Override protocol initiated, but the controls were lagging. The damaged node was not responding. And then, Ava moved. She didn't wait for permission. She ran. Not cautiously, not carefully. She sprinted into the malfunctioning corridor with a speed that made the watching students gasp. The field fluctuation hit her square in the chest, but she didn't stop. Her boots crunched down on shuddering metal. Her teeth clenched. Muscles surged under her skin like taut cables. Drawl was pinned beneath a twisted beam, gasping. The gravitational pressure had spiked again. He couldn't feel his legs. Panic threatened to override his reason. He saw her then, face-focused, eyes narrowed, not with rage but purpose. Ava crouched beside him, wedged her hands beneath the metal, and lifted. The beam groaned, resisting. Her arms shook. Her jaw locked. Drawl blinked. She was straining. Her face was turning red. Sweat beaded across her brow. This wasn't effortless. It was choice. And then, the beam lifted. Just enough for her to hook an arm under Drawl and pull him free. She cradled him against her chest, shielding him as she sprinted from the danger zone. The emergency barrier finally activated a moment later, slamming shut behind her. Silence. HFY descended, along with 2 medbots and the safety supervisor. Drawl was quickly scanned, several deep bruises, 1 dislocated joint, but stable. Ava was barely winded, her breathing deep and controlled. "You disobeyed protocol," HFY said to her sternly. "I did," Ava replied, eyes still locked on Drawl. "And I'd do it again." No one spoke. Then Drawl slowly lifted his head. She saved me." The truth hung in the air like an electric charge. Everyone had seen it. She hadn't attacked. She hadn't threatened. She had risked herself for someone who had barely spoken to her. The predator myth cracked. Later, in the recovery lounge, Drawl looked over as Ava cleaned dirt from her arms. "Why?" he asked. "You could have waited. You could have stayed safe." She looked at him, her expression soft. "Because you were in trouble. That's what anyone would do, right?" Drawl lowered his eyes. "No. Not everyone." A moment of silence passed. "I thought your kind only protected your own," he said. Ava smiled. "We protect who we can. That's how we survive our world. We don't run from danger. We run toward those who need help." Drawl's frill rose slowly, not from fear, but understanding. Back in the dorms that night, stories spread like wildfire. How the Deathworlder had lifted a beam. How she'd outrun a collapsing zone. How she didn't hesitate. But what shocked them most wasn't the strength. It was the compassion. "Would you like me to proceed with Section 4? "Certainly. Here is Section 4, Acceptance and Unity, written with a minimum of 700 words. Hashtag Section 4, Acceptance and Unity. The next solar cycle began like any other, but the atmosphere within the Galactic Academy of Unity had changed. Not by decree or announcement, but subtly, like the first thaw after a long winter. The students of Gymnasium Dome 3, who once whispered behind their claws and mandibles, now stole glances at Ava not out of fear, but curiosity. And slowly, curiosity gave way to something else. Respect. Ava arrived early that morning, as usual, her gym attire clean and her dark hair tied back. She ran through her warm-up alone at first, doing deep squats with gravity weights, then pull-ups against a training rail set to double planetary standard. Her breath came steady, rhythmic. She wasn't showing off. She never had been. She was just working. Drawl stood by the entrance, clutching a hydration sphere in both claws. His dorsal frill twitched, then relaxed. The memory of her dragging him out of that collapsing corridor was still fresh, not just the act, but the expression on her face. Determined, not for glory, but to help. He crossed the room. "Human Ava," he said, trying to mimic the formal greeting she seemed to appreciate. She looked up, grinned. "Just Ava's fine." He hesitated, then nodded. "Ava, would you like a training partner today?" Her grin widened. "I thought you'd never ask." Wordlessly, other students began to drift over. Vaktor, the burly Groshkan who had once avoided eye contact, rumbled, "If there's a team event, I want to be on her squad." Even Lei, whose feathers had bristled in terror only 2 cycles ago, now fluttered over. "I reviewed the course footage. Your technique under gravity flux was mathematically improbable." Ava laughed. "You should see me on a treadmill." That day's training involved cooperative obstacle traversal, where students had to combine species-specific strengths to reach a collective goal, scaling a wall with shifting gravitational pull. In the past, species had self-segregated. The Keltruan teamed only with fellow aquatics, the Avixi only with other flyers, and so on. But today, for the first time, the groups mixed freely. Ava partnered with Drawl and a nimble Hexapi named Veltur. They strategized together, sharing ideas rather than barking orders. When Drawl struggled to gain enough height to grab a ledge, Ava offered a knee, boosting him effortlessly before hauling herself up in one swift pull. Veltur followed, using his extra limbs to stabilize their position on the platform. It wasn't just functional. It was fluid. Dale, ever the stern observer, made no comment, but his uppermost left eye twitched. A rare sign of approval. As the training cycle ended, a new schedule appeared on the overhead display. Interspecies gym exhibition. Open teams encouraged. The chatter exploded. "They've never done open teams before. Are we actually allowed to mix species in competition now?" "I think it's because of Ava." Drawl turned toward her. "Will you enter?" She tilted her head. "Only if you're on my team." He flushed a pale gold. Van Halak for pride and nodded. The following week saw a transformation no one could have predicted. Ava's team, nicknamed the Gravebreakers by students, competed in every category. They weren't the biggest. They weren't the fastest. But they were cohesive. Ava didn't just lead, she adapted. When the event favored aquatic movement, she supported the Keltruan teammates with tow lines. When anti-gravity corridors made footing difficult, she anchored flightless partners with magnetic tethers. Each time someone stumbled, she helped them up. Not once did she push for credit. And slowly, the old fear, the myth of the savage Deathworlder, lost its grip. During the final event, a relay race across 6 varied zones, Ava's team placed second, just behind the Plantarian juggernauts, who were nearly indestructible and twice as large. But when the announcer asked for closing words, the juggernauts stepped aside. "Let the Deathworlder speak," said their leader. Ava hesitated. She stepped forward, tapping the comm mic awkwardly. Hi," she began, her voice echoing across the dome. "So, thanks, I guess?" A few chuckles. "I know I scared some of you at first," she continued, more serious now. "I get it. My species has a rep. Earth is rough. We're taught to survive, to push, to never quit. But that doesn't mean we want to hurt anyone. It just means we know how to keep going. Together." She looked toward Drawl, then scanned the crowd, friends, now, not strangers. "You don't have to be from a death world to be strong," she said. "You just need people who've got your back. And I'm honored to have yours." Silence followed, then thunderous applause, stomping limbs, flashing feather crests, light pulses, and trilled appreciation. Later that evening, in the Academy's common lounge, students from every species gathered. Games were played. Stories were told. Drawl found himself sitting beside Ava, sipping nutrient broth as she nursed a cup of something called cocoa. "We were wrong about you," he admitted. Ava smiled. "Nah, you just didn't know me yet. I still don't understand how your species evolved on a planet like Earth." She leaned back and stared at the simulated stars overhead. "Because we had to," she said softly. "But maybe now we can evolve in other ways too." Drawl nodded, his frill relaxed.
Together.
In the days that followed, Ava became more than just a curiosity. She became a bridge. A living testament to what happened when fear gave way to understanding. When strength was shared, not hoarded. When species stopped seeing each other as threats and started seeing each other as teammates. The Deathworlder had come to the Galactic Academy, and she'd changed it forever. Let me know if you'd like a title page, summary, or a polished version compiled as a document.